Friends, welcome back to another educative content. So today I'll be talking about or sharing my views on the negative aspects of yoga. The reason why I am focusing on the negative aspects is generally people have a belief that yoga cannot do much harm, but unfortunately they can, and we have significant research papers which tells that yoga is not healthy for a lot of majority of the people. So when I dwell into this, I try to find out what is the reason for giving a negative approach. Where I see that it's all because of the wrong ways and wrong techniques which people have adopted, or even being not aware of the regular principles which yoga has kept for us to understand and practice accordingly. So it takes a bold step, I guess, to talk about anything in my field which is negative. But as I said, it's more of education, and I look forward to make sure that you are educated enough to not make any mistakes. So tomorrow you cannot blame yoga, or you cannot blame your instructor who is doing or who is asking you to do certain postures. At the same time, you forget the principles which is needed for the practice. So let's see what exactly yoga as such talks about ways to hold or ways to do your practice. So when you talk about some of the do's, which is basically the regulations and rules which you need to follow during the practice, they are something like keeping your stomach empty, full meals or after your food. If you try to do practice yoga, then you can exert much stress on your stomach, and that can lead to indigestion, and that can lead to a lot of other problems. Similarly, at the same time, you cannot keep your stomach too hunger, because that distracts you and you are always focused on your stomach rather than on your body. So that is the reason why hydration is also very important. In a given scenario, let's say when you are basically, people who do in morning sessions, they wake up, brush their teeth, just wash their face and just dash to the yoga center. If you exert yourself there in the yoga room or yoga practice, then you might tend to lose yourself up, because there is no hydration which is needed for the body. So make sure that you drink adequate water 15 to 20 minutes before your practice. Along with that, make sure that you wear the loose clothes, because the tighter the clothes is, the restricted your movements will be. The cramping of your muscles are inevitable. So that is the reason why make sure that you wear good loosened cloths for the free movement of your muscles or your body or your joints. In the same context, you have to be more aware of your breath. I think I've been telling you for a long time that yoga is not just about practicing asanas or maintaining asanas. Yoga is how well is your breathing in that asana. So that increases your awareness, that increases your perception towards your practice. Similarly, this perfection, if you want to get it in a daily basis, then you have to practice. So make sure that whatever you are keeping on learning, you do it every day. Dedicate a time slot for that, and make sure that you make that as a habit, and you practice every day no matter what happens. Because if you don't practice and then you start off suddenly, then again the pains and aches and all the diseases will come back. Similarly, yoga has specifically said not to do practices under such some circumstances. Something like when you are hurrying your sessions, like you just want to do it for the sake of it, or in the heat of the moment you try to hold the position by not breathing well. The more you don't let the air in and let the air out, the more cramping your muscles gets up. So that it is not a gymming session, it is not an exercise session, it's a yoga session. So basically what we want you to do is make sure that you don't held on to a posture. There is a smooth flow of the movements. At the same time, you breathe well. If you don't breathe well, your muscles get cramped up, and that can lead to disease. At the same time, we generally ask you to take a shower after 30 minutes of a practice, or at least 45 minutes before the practice. Because what happens is, once you take a shower, the freshness of the shower is there with you no matter what. At the same time, because of the breathing techniques, because of the way your body can take shape, these shower will not be a cause for you to understand how well. Because what happens is, if you take a cold shower before your practice, you might not be able to move with that elasticity. At the same time, if you take a hot shower, then that will also lead to a lot of hyperelasticity, where you can just move your body but still you can twist or pull your muscle or your ligaments. So at the same time, yoga specifically tells that do not do any kind of a yoga practice when there is an adverse pain condition or adverse metabolic condition. So whatever be, you have to understand that it is not to be practiced when you have certain kind of a disease, which probably we'll discuss in the next few slides. At the same time, make sure that you don't start off your practice within 1.5 hours of your food. Generally what happens is the emptying the entire food which you consume, it takes nearly 2.5 hours to 3 hours for it to run from your stomach down to your intestine. So we expect the body not to keep hunger. At the same time, the food, make sure that it is passed out of your small intestine or out of your stomach and enters into the small intestine, keeping your stomach empty. So that is the reason why we focus on hydration, because drinking water makes somewhat the internal chemistry much more relaxed. So there are certain diseases also which yoga specifically mentions that this is not to be done during these processes. Glaucoma is one such cause where you have eye problem. It increases the circulation to your eyes. Certain asanas, certain practices like Trataka, which is just gazing at a flame in front of your eyes and enhancing your focus and attention and concentration, you're not supposed to do when you have glaucoma. The same time, something like let's say you're doing Shirsasana, you're doing Sarvangasana, where the pressure, back pressure towards your face and your neck is high, you're generally supposed to avoid if you have glaucoma. The same time, pregnancy, generally we try to avoid at the first trimester, that is the first 3 months of the pregnancy, and not do all the major asanas or practices, especially in the third trimester, that is the final 3 months of the pregnancy, because the first is very critical for the so-called the bond between the embryo and the mother's uterine cavity. So we generally don't ask the mother to exert during that time. At the same time, after the delivery or just before the so-called 9 months, just before those periods, that is let's say 6, 7, 8 or 8, 9, 10, 7, 8, 9. During this period, we ask them to be more careful, because it needs a little bit of more kind of attention towards what exactly is happening. And during this time is when we start talking about Garbha Samskaras and trying to understand what is the mother and health of the child can be taken care of. The same along with that, we also want you to avoid during hypertension. If you're having too much of a hypertensed state where you're not able to control your let's say heartbeat or heart rate, you don't do much of an exertive kind of asanas. Like any asana for that matter, it gives a little exertion to the body. So we need you to avoid during hypertension. And back pain. Let's say you have a back pain, if it is difficulty even in moving forward or bending backwards. See, back pain, mechanical back pain is different, and I have talked about back pain as such in previous videos. So have a look at what exactly are they. So if you have acute, let's say it just started yesterday or it just started in the past 3 days, then avoid doing it. Get a little rest for your back, slowly relax the back muscles and then get back to your practices. Let's say there is a deep injury to your back, don't practice or don't get on to the practice until unless the doctor has advised. The reason is back holds the majority of your center of gravity, that is L2. The lumbar region holds up the majority of the weight of the body and gives the balance to the body. So if there is a slight movement, there is an aggravating pain. At the same time, the slight change in the center of gravity disbalances your own postures, disbalances your own movements. So that can be kind of a problematic. The same time, hernia. So these are the few reasons where the yoga is 100% not to be advised. So what are the practices which can lead to these kind of definitions? The reason why we are talking about is many people today are doing yoga online, which I welcome. I'm not saying it's wrong, but over exaggerating the postures, it has to be more simple. So if you are a regular practitioner and you need someone to guide you, then you can switch on to online sessions. But if you don't have any idea about yoga and you just want to look into the YouTube channels or other channels or look into the beginning sessions of yoga and then you practice, you might able to not give much attention to the postures as such, and you might get a fall. So that is the reason why beginners who are into YouTube, I would rather ask you to go for a standard session, rather than if you're not able to willingly physically have a contact with the person in front of you, at least through camera. Let him see what exactly you're doing, let him find out the mistakes what you are supposed to find, and then you can practice the session. The same time, there have been trends like beer yoga. As the name suggests, you're supposed to drink beer when you're practicing yoga, which is taken a huge kind of implement from traditional text, but there is nothing which is talks about beer and drinking and yoga practicing, because that goes against the principles itself. So as I said, you have to keep your body hydrated. I have nothing against beer, but I have against practice of yoga with beer. So what happens is, hyperhydration, or just by drinking beer you can either lose the balance. If there is some spill on the floor, you can again slip. That's one thing. And second, it's against the practices of yoga. The principle itself says not to drink sufficient. I mean, drink sufficient before the practice, drink sufficiently after the practice. Why you want to mix this two is the question. So, well, anyway, beer is a kind of an intoxicant, no matter what. So the idea for beer yoga needs more understanding and clarity. Apart from, there has been a trend of hot yoga, there has been a trend of sauna yoga. Unfortunately, this is one reason where yoga seems to have a lot of negative research papers. The reason why there is a lot of negative research papers in yoga is basically just by increasing the room temperature. As I said, at the extreme temperature, body seems to be very loose. The muscular ability to hold up itself loses, and then you can crumble down faster. You might be flexible, you might lose your weight, but when you're practicing, the stretch of the muscle is needed. That is the reason why we ask you to be aware of these stretches. If you remove the stretch, it's like you can do whatever you want with the body, and then you don't have any attention or any awareness of your stretches and strains. So as I said, when you're doing a practice, when you're not focused on your stretches, your strains, then you don't have any limitations. Once you don't have a limitation, then you exert. That can lead to some kind of a problem in the stability of your asanas. So this is one way where exactly we can see that this kind of technique of increasing the room temperature and practicing yoga has a negative implications. Along with that, today there is a trend, in a week, 3 days you do power yoga, 3 days you do Zumba, 3 days you do restorative yoga, 3 days you do exercising or gymming. So there is no much of a balance in your practices. One balance keeps you very high, one balance keeps you very low, and then you try to make a balance about what exactly you are doing. That's not good for yoga. That I would not call it as yoga. I would rather call it as an exercise. But yoga seems to be the catch of the day. Normally people associate everything with yoga. So that is the reason why I don't feel comfortable acknowledging this practice as one of the yogic regime. So yoga is a part of your day-to-day activity. Like I have been telling and specifying a lot of you guys who have been watching my show, and yes, those who have not been watching my show, please go and look at the definitions of yoga and on all yogic principles as such. Yoga, when you do it with devotion, it becomes bhakti yoga. You are connecting to your emotion is bhakti yoga. You are connecting with your knowledge, it becomes jnana yoga. You are trying to connect this with the work which you are doing, or you are trying to connect some of you to the work associated and then trying to get the results out of the work, it's karma yoga. Similarly, you're trying to connect yourself with the asanas, with your breath and your internal chemistry is Raja Yoga, and this is what you are supposed to practice. So this reduces your disease, and that is the reason why I can't find any link of how Zumba, how power yoga or how exercise and all of them can be accompanied into one exercise regime and can call it as a package. So don't go for those kind of things. I have no problem, but don't call it as a yoga. You want to lose quick weight, you want to gain muscles, fine, you can. That is exercise regime, that is gymming. But why do yoga and bring yoga, which is more subtler, which is more finer, which is more refined, into such activity where you don't actually relax? You sweat. Yoga was never mandated for sweat. Yoga was never mandated for high voltage or high octane kind of a thing. Yoga is more subtle. Yoga is more inwards, and yoga is more trying to understand or trying to make sure that your body responds well. So that is the reason why these becomes a problem when you take this and try to make it into part of yoga. Well, yes, what has happened is nothing but we have something with these procedures. They don't understand when the body is stimulated, when the body is relaxed, and they hamper the system. At the same time, you don't have awareness about your movements. Because of this rushed kind of a practice, as I said, gymming, as I said, power yoga or anything, there has no been connect with the physical body and with how your body is trying to tell you. I can give you a better way, that when was the last time you thanked your heart for continuously beating? That thankingness comes only when you practice yoga. That thankingness comes only when you are trying to understand that there is a large mechanism which is happening which you are not aware of. So you're trying to relax those parts through practice of yoga and through practice of even spirituality at some levels. So here we are trying to forget the principles and the ethics which requires in yoga. At the same time, this type of competitiveness on a long run hampers your system. I have been myself as a competitive person, and I know we have been practicing, when the competition starts, let's say somewhere around in the early weeks of February to late March, we have competition period. Especially when I was in my college, I used to represent my university, so I've been doing well in the competition. But on a long run, today also I don't need to preheat myself to get on to the field. I can practice because I have understood that it can be done without much of a strain. But because of this practice, I have fractured my wrist because it was more prone to get fractures. I have pushed my body limit to a larger extent. People have suffered injuries because of this kind of a competitive spirit. That is when we try to understand that competition yoga is entirely different. People who are generally flexible from their young age are the people who are actually representing nationals or states or districts or having general competitions. So if you're doing like that, I have no problem. But if you're practicing at the age of, let's say, even after the age of 20, if you're looking at this video and trying to inculcate yogic principles and yogic thoughts, then I would rather focus you to be more towards slow paced, ready, recurrent, and being more mature in understanding your body and mind. So that is how yoga should be. Competitiveness, if you put more into it, then it becomes a gymnastic. So the more you try to bend your body, the more you try to flip your body, it becomes more of a gymnastics rather than yoga. So yoga itself has a very kind of what do you say, understanding which have intuitiveness. So that intuitiveness, if it doesn't come in your practice, then whatever you're doing is of no use. So you can just quit. Probably that's what people are doing today. Once they lose their weight, then they don't forget about practices of yoga. They come back to their normal regular activity. So it's not like for losing the sake for the losing weight, for that sake you are practicing yoga. Once you lost or once you reached your aim, then you forget it. That's not how it's going to happen. So that is the reason why make sure that this is more of an internal way of understanding your chemistry, thanking your body for whatever it has been doing, and appreciating the body for the future times whenever you are trying to exert or whenever you are trying to take stress on the body. So when they respond well, you respond well to your surroundings. So that is the reason why yoga brings more of an internal aptitude rather than external physicality. So do I have any scientific basis? Definitely, because being a doctor, we have been seeing and we have seen a lot of research papers which is coming negative implications. The problem with this research is, to prove something is good, you need a lot of time. But to prove something is bad, you need just a span of seconds. So if there is something which is negative happening, research recognizes that faster. I mean, I can call it as a bias, but that is how it is. For us to prove something is happening, we need to show a lot of things, because we are changing the perspectives of field. At the same time, something negative implication picks up, then it picks up in a large chunk of our practices. So that is the reason why I am trying to get you into this, that there are a lot of negative papers. So in America, this is very famous. People who have been doing hot yoga, sauna yoga, they have gone to hospitals to tell that they have been doing yoga and then they have suffered this back pain, they have suffered this shoulder pain, there has been dislocation. So in 2010, there was a paper which said that 7,369 candidates who are practicing yoga have come up in some or the other ways to emergency departments in hospital across one of the kind, I don't remember which exactly, I have linked the papers below. So one of the practices, or one of that those kind of a session where they have increased the injury. This also lead to exhaustion. Because of exhaustion, there is changes in the body chemistry. Once there are changes in the body chemistry, that lead to a lot of negative implications. Along with that, obviously there is pain, which is a very bad thing which happens because of wrong postures. Let's say you are standing on your headstand, which is a very common, or shoulder stand, which is very common, topsy-turvy postures. You lose a balance. You can make sure that you are locking your neck, and you have very difficulty in moving it. So that is the reason, don't hurry. You have a limitation of your body. You have to overgrow it. Regularly, if you try to practice your regular asanas, then you can overgrow it with much more ease. So along with that, we have seen that there has been increase in 62% of musculoskeletal injuries in the past 8 years, and there has been 14% increase in cardiac ailments in the past 10 years. So this is how increasing the muscle joints, or the bones, or the tendons are getting weakened up because of wrong practices and procedures. At the same time, people who thought it's good for heart, 14% of them are actually dying from heart attack or any of the heart related injuries. So that is the reason why make sure that you practice with the aim in yoga. Don't catch up with your trends. Don't try it with your peers. You have a better body. Thank your body, because your body is entirely unique, because your fingerprints are unique, your irises are unique. Similarly, your body is unique. Because of this, yoga becomes a very intuitive for your own welfare. So make sure that you practice whatever you are doing as of now, and make sure that you implicate the same thing. So how do you try to get this into your day-to-day activity? So let's say you want to start off yoga looking at these things. So look for as minimalistic practices as possible. So don't see people, if you try to compare me with anyone, I have an experience of 20 years. So I will bend better, obviously, because of my body's flexibility, because of my age. But for you, what is important? If you could get the correct source of your way of doing yoga, then you can have your own minimalistic program. So make sure that I'm not telling you not to go for a group session. What I'm trying to tell you is, you have a limitation. If your forward bending is having a problem, work on forward bending, work on backward bending, and make sure that you don't exaggerate your practices. Then understand this body has ailments, and there is a particular sign because of which you have a problem. So address the problem, and make sure that there is a world which is there beyond your body. That is the reason why our focus is more onto the breath, because breath can hold your system, can hold your muscles, can hold your posture. At the same time, if you start holding your breath, and if there is no much movement of the breath, that can break your system. So there is a science which probably the science can't experience, or science can't experiment on that. But we need to understand there is something which is very well we can say stuck to yoga, which makes sure that it is very, very important for you to understand that there is something science beyond the so-called physicality of your structure. So again, age is not a number. So you might have come on to a very young age to practice yoga. At the same time, you can be at the age of 60 and think that you cannot do yoga. As I said, your body, your limitations, you work on it, and age doesn't become a number. Slow and steady wins the race here. At the same time, make sure that you don't turn out to be a rabbit and run on the track, because you might have think, oh, I have lost 60 years of my life. Now I don't know how many years I live. But whatever it is, now you have turned to yoga. Make sure that you practice at your pace, you practice at your speed, but with the same speed, with the same agility, you increase the boundary. Your body has a boundary, and you tend to push that boundary a little further every day. So when you try to challenge your own system on a regular day-to-day basis, then you can have a better way of doing flexible asanas. Then you can have a better way of holding, at the same time restraining the diseases to where it is. So I hope you enjoyed this channel and the content which is coming up, and I can see you have been keeping me encouraged for many of such videos. Because of you guys, I am able to come up with new thoughts. So keep liking this. If you have anything, whether you believe in the theories or not, I would like to have a conversation with that. So you can write down in the comment section. If you like this, the work which I am doing, you can subscribe to my channel. So this is also for people who are not subscribed. Majority of you are just looking online and not subscribing to the channel. Subscription, liking and sharing encourages me to do such work, and we are coming with more such interesting topics. So keep yourself hooked every Saturday evening or Sunday early morning for such intuitive contents. So we'll be coming up with many such videos which yoga has to offer to us, and make sure to be online available for such videos. Looking forward for more encouragement from your end. Thank you.